Can you play a musical instrument? If you don't, what musical instrument would you like to learn how to play? Hello everyone, I'm Kathleen Pelly. Welcome to Journey with Story. I'm sure many of you can play all sorts of musical instruments, perhaps the piano or the guitar, or even a violin or a flute. Well, today's story is a tale from Russia about a tsaritsa. She is the wife of the Tsar, who is an emperor leader of Russia. And this tsaritsa plays a musical instrument called the harp, which is actually the national emblem of Ireland. This tsaritsa happens to be very, very clever, and she uses her harp playing skills to, well, let's just take a listen and see how she does use her musical talent. Before we begin, if you haven't already done so, please do take a moment to rate and review our podcast wherever you listen to it, as it really helps to grow our outreach. And remember to check out our website, www.journeywithstory.com, to see our new Journey with Story t-shirts and Journey with Story colouring books that you can purchase. Now, let's take a journey with the Wandering Harpist. Long ago, in a distant part of Russia, there lived a Tsar and a Tsaritsa. One day, the Tsar decided to make a trip to the Holy Land. He liked fine things, and the carriage he travelled in was painted a rather ostentatious red with gilt edges. Unfortunately for the Tsar, this made him quite noticeable. The king of the Holy Land was known as the Accursed King and was renowned for his cruelty. He was a vain man and loved to be in the spotlight. When he heard about the ostentatious Tsar, who was exciting so much attention, he immediately ordered that the man be captured. The Accursed King treated the Tsar very badly. At night he was chained to the wall and forced to sleep standing up. And during the day the Accursed King forced the Tsar's head into a horse collar and made him pull a plough as though he were an ox. The Tsar was distraught. He knew that his wife would be worried about him and decided that he must get word to her. He bribed a guard with a few gold coins that he had hidden in a purse around his waist, and the guard brought him pen, ink, and paper, promising to send his letter. My sweet wife, you are probably wondering what on earth has happened to me. Do not fret. I am alive, but in dire circumstances. The Accursed King has imprisoned me. You must come to save me as soon as possible. From your loving husband. The Tsaritsa received this letter and wrung her hands in despair. She spent a sleepless night, tossing and turning and racking her brains. By morning, she had a plan. In her spare time, the Tsaritsa liked to play the guzli, a small harp-like instrument. Through hours of practicing, she'd become good enough to pass for a professional. The plan was simple. She would dress as a wandering musician and undertake the rescue mission herself. First, the Tsaritsa cut off all her hair. Then she removed all of her finery, dressed herself in a simple robe, and slipped quietly out of the palace. The Tsaritsa followed the same route as her husband, but unlike him, drew very little attention to herself. When she found her way to the Accursed King's palace, she was faced with two enormous locked gates. The Tsaritsa asked the guards to let her through so that she could play for the king. But they sneered at her simple robe and refused her entry. "Very well," she said to the guards. "I shall play out here then." She took out her harp and began to play. Within minutes, the disdainful guards were on their knees in front of her, utterly entranced by the beautiful music. "I've never heard anything so wonderful in all my life," "The king must hear this," exclaimed one of the guards. Without further ado, the Tsaritsa was led to the king's courtyard, where she continued to play the lovely, haunting melodies. The accursed king was rarely pleased by anything, but the harp music touched him so deeply that tears filled his eyes. It had been such a long time since he'd cried that the king didn't know what was happening and shouted for assistance. "Why, your majesty, those are tears," said a servant, trying to keep a straight face. The king purpled with embarrassment. "You fool! These are no tears, it's sweat! I'm far too hot! Fan me!" Privately, the king was pleased. He had thought himself unable to cry. "Harpist, you play the sweetest music that I have ever heard in my life. I fear if you stop, the colour will drain from my world. Please, will you stay a few more days?" The Tsaritsa agreed willingly, and after the third day, the king asked her to name her reward. "Well, it's rather lonely being a wandering musician," she said. "I wonder if I might take one of your prisoners for company." "Why, yes, of course, take whoever you please," said the king. The Tsaritsa was taken up to the prison where she chose the Tsar as her companion. Luckily, he didn't recognize his wife in disguise. After they had been travelling together for a few days, the Tsaritsa released the Tsar and told him that he was free. "I can never thank you enough," said the Tsar. "You won't believe this, but I actually am a Tsar. Please do me the honour of a visit sometime." "Oh, don't worry. You'll see me soon enough," smiled the Tsaritsa. It took the Tsar a long time to find his way home. When the Tsaritsa ran out to meet him, he spoke angrily. "Now you welcome me with open arms? But did you shed a tear while I was gone? I think not. If it wasn't for a benevolent musician, I would still be in that dungeon." The Tsaritsa was unmoved. She was well used to her husband's displays of anger. Quietly, she left the room and went to change back into her musician's disguise before sitting down in the courtyard to play. At once the Tsar rushed out and embraced her. "Harpist, you came! I was just telling my ministers that if I ever saw you again, I would promise you half my kingdom for rescuing me." With a flourish, the Tsaritsa pulled off her robe, revealing the dress underneath. The Tsar gasped and bowed his head in shame. "I should have known it was you. No one plays the harp like my wife. Please forgive me. Now, seeing as the kingdom is already yours, may I honour you instead with a 7-day feast?" "That will do very nicely," answered the Tsaritsa. "But please find someone else to play the music." Well, she was a very clever Tsaritsa to use her harp to rescue her husband, wasn't she? I wonder, what do you think this story's souvenir is? You know, the little nugget of truth about what it means to be human and live in this world. Yes, I think it might have something to do with what the Tsar himself learned, which was, yes, be careful not to take the people around you for granted, and to appreciate all of their talents. I think that would make a good discussion around the dinner table. Think of all the talents each member of your family has and celebrate them. Cheerio then. Join me next time for Journey with Story. Music and post-production was by Colette Jonas.